She married the CEO for stability, but he was hiding a life she never imagined. Claire Bennett looked like a bride in the mirror. That was the problem. The ivory dress fit too well. The veil softened her face. The diamond earrings Adrian Shaw's assistant had sent that morning caught the light each time she breathed. Everything about her reflection suggested romance, joy, a woman standing at the edge of the happiest day of her life. But in Claire's hand was not a love letter. It was a list of medical bills. Daniel's dialysis appointments, prescription costs, insurance gaps, hospital balances carried over from months when Claire had paid the rent first and prayed the clinic would wait. The paper trembled between her fingers. She had imagined marriage once. Years ago, before her father gambled away their savings and left behind debt like a second corpse. Before her younger brother's kidneys began failing. Before love became something other people could afford to choose freely. A soft knock came at the door. Adrian Shaw entered with the careful manners of a man who never stepped into a room without permission. He wore a black suit, not a tuxedo, and looked less like a groom than a CEO arriving for a difficult negotiation. His eyes moved to the paper in her hand, then back to her face. "We can still stop," he said. Claire almost laughed. Rich people always asked that when they knew poor people did not have enough room to choose differently. Adrian did not flinch when she said it aloud. "I don't want you to feel forced," he replied. "I'm not forced." Claire folded the list of bills and slipped it into her small satin purse. "I'm just tired of all my choices being terrible." That was the truth of it. Their marriage was not a fairy tale. It was an arrangement written in clean legal language. Adrian would settle the debts her father left behind, cover Daniel's treatment, and give Claire stability she had not known since childhood. In return, Claire would become Mrs. Shaw, a respectable wife, a calm presence beside him at fundraisers, hearings, company events. A woman who made his home look stable enough for the custody board reviewing his guardianship of Mia, his 9-year-old niece. A woman who helped quiet the board members whispering that a widowed CEO raising a child alone was becoming unpredictable. Adrian had not promised love, only respect. At the time, Claire had told herself respect was safer. The ceremony was small, elegant, and cold enough to feel expensive. Adrian placed the ring on her finger with steady hands. Claire said her vows clearly. No one cried. Afterward, she moved into the Shaw estate on the edge of Lake Michigan, a house so perfect it seemed designed to discourage fingerprints. Marble floors, tall windows, fresh flowers in rooms no one sat in. Mia stood at the bottom of the staircase when Claire arrived. She was small, solemn, and beautiful in a navy dress, with dark hair pulled back too tightly. She looked at Claire's suitcase, then at the ring on her finger. "Hello, Mia," Claire said gently. Mia did not answer. Behind her, Victoria Shaw appeared with a smile that had never once been surprised by pain. "Welcome, Claire," she said. "I hope you understand what a serious responsibility you've accepted." Claire understood. She understood the way Victoria's gaze paused on her department store shoes. The way a maid took her suitcase before she could refuse. The way every beautiful thing in the house seemed to ask what she had traded to enter it. That night, Adrian walked her to a bedroom at the far end of the second floor. Not his, hers. The room was soft, pale, and untouched, a guest room dressed as mercy. Adrian stood in the doorway, one hand in his pocket. "You don't owe me anything beyond honesty," he said. "Not your body, not affection, not gratitude." Relief moved through Claire first, then, unexpectedly, sadness. Because his kindness confirmed what she already knew. She was not his wife in the intimate, foolish, hopeful sense of the word. She was a clause in an agreement. A woman protected by boundaries because desire had never been part of the deal. After he left, Claire called Daniel from the edge of the bed. Her brother answered on the third ring, voice thin but playful. "So," he said, "do I have to call you Lady Shaw now?" She smiled despite herself. "Only if you want me to hang up." He joked about marrying rich next time himself, preferably someone with good insurance and a lake house. Claire let him make her laugh because laughter was easier than telling him the room felt too large and she felt very small inside it. Then Daniel went quiet. "Claire," he asked, "are you okay?" She looked at the ring on her finger. "Yes," she lied, "I'm okay." The first family dinner happened the next evening. Victoria sat at one end of the table, Adrian at the other, Claire and Mia opposite each other like strangers forced into a portrait. Conversation moved politely until Victoria set down her wineglass. "Have you considered what you now?" she asked Claire. "Beyond public appearances, I mean. A woman should feel useful even in a marriage like this." Adrian's fork stopped. Claire felt the insult slide under her skin, smooth and practiced. Before she could answer, Mia spoke. "Are you going to leave when Uncle Adrian stops paying you?" The room went silent. Claire looked at the child and saw no cruelty, only fear wearing sharp edges, so she did not lie. "I don't know what the future looks like," Claire said softly. "But I won't promise you something sweet just to make tonight easier." Mia's face shifted, confused by honesty where comfort should have been. Adrian looked at his niece, then at his mother. "Claire is part of this house now," he said. "She will be treated with respect." The words were firm, necessary, but Claire felt the distance inside them. He defended her as one might defend an agreement made in good faith, fairly, honorably, without tenderness. Later that night, rain tapped against the windows. Claire stood in the dark hallway, unable to sleep. From the upper landing, she saw Adrian below. He wore a dark coat and carried no briefcase. No driver waited by the door. No security followed him. At nearly midnight, the CEO of Shaw Meridian Group stepped into the rain alone, started his own car, and drove away. Claire watched the taillights disappear beyond the gate. For the first time since becoming his wife, she wondered what kind of life a man like Adrian Shaw had to hide. Claire learned the Shaw estate the way a person learned a language they were not sure they had permission to speak. The breakfast room faced the lake. Mia took toast without butter. Victoria drank black tea at exactly 8. Adrian left the house by 7:30 most mornings, already buttoned into his suit, already answering emails in the voice of a man who had become a building from the inside out. Claire tried to be useful. She arranged her own closet because she hated the idea of a maid touching her thrift store sweaters. She asked the kitchen staff where cleaning supplies were kept, which made them look at her with polite alarm. She learned Mia's school schedule, the name of her piano teacher, the brand of cereal she pretended not to like but ate every morning. Mia noticed everything. She noticed Claire never used the black credit card Adrian had placed on the desk in her room. She noticed Claire washed her own clothes on the delicate cycle. She noticed the small notebook where Claire wrote down every expense, even though there was no longer any practical reason to count dollars that carefully. Mia did not soften, but she watched. That was something. Adrian remained courteous, almost flawlessly so. In public, he placed his hand lightly at Claire's back, but never too low. At charity dinners, he introduced her as his wife without hesitation. At board events, he stood beside her with a quiet protectiveness that made photographers lean closer. He never embarrassed her or touched her without consent. He never asked for more than she had agreed to give. Some days, Claire found his restraint merciful. Other days, it felt like being kept behind glass. Every Thursday, Adrian disappeared. At first, Claire did not mark the pattern. He was a CEO. CEOs had late meetings, emergency calls, dinners with people whose names appeared in financial magazines. But by the third week, the rhythm became impossible to ignore. Thursday evening, always after dinner, no driver or security, no mention on his official calendar. When he returned, usually close to midnight, he looked different. Not guilt exactly. Tired in a way work did not explain. His coat carried traces of another world. Smoke from a crowded kitchen, cheap hand soap, damp plaster, sometimes fresh paint. Not perfume. That would have been easier. Claire told herself she had no right to ask. Their marriage had rules, stability for appearance, respect without intimacy. Honesty where necessary, privacy where possible. If Adrian had a secret, maybe it belonged to the part of his life she had not purchased with her signature. But then the gossip began. A society column mentioned Adrian Shaw's unexplained late-night absences. A business blog suggested the new Mrs. Shaw had not brought much warmth to the widower's home. A blurry photograph appeared online of Adrian leaving the estate alone in the rain. The comments were cruel in that bored, casual way strangers specialized in. Maybe the marriage was already failing. Maybe the new wife had been a mistake. Maybe a man like Adrian Shaw did not marry a woman like Claire Bennett for love. That last one was true, which somehow made the rest hurt more. Victoria found Claire in the morning room after the article spread. She spoke while arranging flowers in a vase as if discussing weather. If there were ever a scandal, she said, people would not blame Adrian first. Men like him were forgiven for loneliness. Women like Claire were blamed for not being enough to cure it. Claire stood very still. She wanted to say that she had not married Adrian to cure anything. She wanted to ask whether Victoria had ever loved anyone without turning them into a family asset. Instead, she said nothing, because the thing she feared most was not that Adrian had another woman. It was that he had another life, and the version of him in it was warmer than the man who came home to her. That Thursday, Daniel was admitted to the hospital. A mild complication, the nurse said. Nothing catastrophic. But Claire heard the word hospital and felt the old terror return. She called Adrian once, then twice. Both calls went unanswered. His assistant did not know where he was. The house staff exchanged glances they tried to hide. Claire took a taxi to the hospital alone. Daniel tried to joke through the IV line in his arm. Claire smiled for him, adjusted his blanket, asked questions, signed forms, and did everything she had always done before she became Mrs. Shaw. The marriage had given her money. It had not given her someone to call at 10:43 p.m. when her brother was pale and trying not to be scared. By the next Thursday, Claire stopped pretending not to care. She waited near the upstairs window until Adrian left. Then she took a car service and followed from a careful distance through the wet Chicago streets. She expected a hotel, a private club, a quiet apartment with warm windows and a woman who knew how he took his coffee. Instead, Adrian's car turned south, away from the polished parts of the city, into streets where brick buildings wore old wounds and corner stores glowed behind metal grates. He parked beside a narrow, aging building with a faded blue door. There was no sign at first. Only when Claire stepped closer, rain soaking through her coat, did she see the small plaque half hidden by ivy. Elise House. The name meant nothing and everything. Through the front window, she saw women gathered around folding tables, children with backpacks, a bulletin board covered in job listings and school notices, a toddler crying near the entrance. Then Adrian appeared, not Adrian Shaw, CEO, not the distant husband who slept down the hall. This Adrian had rolled up sleeves and wet hair. He knelt under a sink with a wrench in one hand, tightening a leaking pipe while a little boy held a flashlight for him. Later he lifted a crying toddler onto his hip with the ease of long practice. He spoke to a woman whose cheek was bruised purple beneath makeup, and his face held no pity, no corporate polish, only careful attention. Claire stood outside, unable to move. This was not betrayal. Or if it was stranger than the kind she had prepared herself to survive. Adrian looked up then. Their eyes met through the glass. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he came to the door. Rain ran down Claire's face, but she did not know if she was cold or furious or simply stunned. Adrian opened the door. He did not look angry. He looked tired, and behind the tiredness was something almost like grief. "This," he said quietly, "is the part of my life I didn't put in the contract." Claire looked past him into the warm, crowded room, and for the first time, she understood that her husband had not been hiding a woman. He had been hiding a wound. Adrian did not ask Claire to come in. He simply held the door open, as if he knew the choice mattered. Claire stood in the rain for another moment, staring past him into the warmth of Elise House. A little girl was asleep on two pushed-together chairs. A woman in a gray sweater filled out a job application at a folding table. Somewhere in the back, a kettle whistled. Nothing about it looked like a CEO's secret affair. That made Claire angrier in a way she did not know how to explain. She stepped inside. The building smelled of soup, laundry detergent, old wood, and something sweet baking badly in an oven. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed photograph of a woman with bright eyes and wind-blown hair. Elise Shaw. Adrian saw Claire looking. "She started this place," he said. "Before she got sick." Claire kept her coat on. "And you thought hiding it from your wife was easier than saying that." The word wife landed between them strangely. Adrian looked tired enough to be honest. Elise had a friend who couldn't leave her husband because she had nowhere safe to go and no money of her own. Elise said charity dinners were useless if the women who needed help couldn't afford the cab ride to get there. He looked around the room. So she built this. Elise House was not just a shelter. It was a temporary home, a legal resource center, a job training program, and sometimes, Adrian admitted, an emergency landing place for women and children who had run with nothing but a backpack and fear. After Elise died, he kept it going quietly, too quietly. The Shaw family did not want the name connected to domestic violence cases, police reports, lawsuits, or frightened women hiding from powerful men. Worse, years ago, Elise House had sheltered a woman preparing testimony against one of Shaw Meridian's former business partners. The family called it a liability. Adrian called it Elise's unfinished work. Claire listened, arms folded. The explanation softened nothing at first. "You let the papers make me look like a wife being cheated on," she said. "Victoria warned me. People would blame me for not keeping you. And all this time you were here fixing sinks." Adrian did not defend himself. "I'm good at hiding things that are hard to explain." "That isn't an answer." "No," he said. "It's a flaw." That stopped her more than an apology would have. Over the next hour, Claire saw a version of Adrian she had never met inside the Shaw estate. Not warmer exactly, but less armored. He knew where extra blankets were kept. He knew which child hated peas, which woman was applying for nursing assistant training, which window jammed in the upstairs hall. The women did not treat him like a savior. One of them told him his soup tasted like a lawsuit against vegetables. Another took the wrench from his hand and informed Claire that Mr. Shaw was banned from electrical repairs after the outlet incident. Adrian accepted the teasing with a humility that unsettled her. This was not performance. No photographer was there to catch it. Claire came back the next Thursday. She told herself it was because the donation files were a disaster. That was true. Receipts were stuffed into envelopes. Training schedules were written on sticky notes. The children's room had mismatched curtains, broken shelves, and chairs too large for small bodies. Claire knew numbers. She knew spaces. She knew what it felt like to live in a room that did not belong to you. So she organized the books, rebuilt the budget spreadsheet, sketched a better layout for the children's corner, and found herself staying longer than planned. Mia followed her one afternoon. Claire found the girl standing in the hallway, still wearing her school uniform, watching her read to two toddlers under a blanket fort made from old sheets. Mia did not say much, but she stayed. Later, Claire caught her smoothing one of the new curtains Claire had sewn from donated fabric, her face thoughtful in a way that made her look younger than 9. That evening, one of the staff members showed Claire an old video Elise had recorded for volunteers. On the screen, Elise was thinner than in the photograph, but her voice was clear. She said writing checks was easy for people with money. The harder thing was showing up when pain was inconvenient. She said shelters did not need heroes. They needed people willing to stay after the speech ended. Then she smiled, tired and sad. She said Adrian had a good heart, but sometimes he thought love meant providing from a distance. Claire paused the video. Something inside her twisted. Adrian was here now, present, patient, useful in imperfect ways. He was becoming for Elise House what Elise had once begged him to become in life, and Claire wondered where that left her. Was she his wife? Or another room in the house of his guilt? The question followed her until the night Daniel got worse. Claire was sorting training forms at Elise House when the hospital called. Daniel had developed complications. His blood pressure had dropped. They were stabilizing him, but she needed to come. Her body went cold. Adrian was beside her immediately, already pulling out his phone. Within seconds, he was naming specialists, arranging a private transfer, talking about an ambulance upgrade and a medical helicopter if traffic was bad. The room tilted. "Stop," Claire said. He froze. She could barely breathe. "I don't need you to turn my fear into a Shaw Meridian project." Adrian lowered the phone slowly. "I'm trying to help. I know that's the problem." Her voice broke. "You don't ask. You deploy." For the first time, Adrian looked truly lost. All his resources, all his competence, all his instinct to fix, useless in front of one terrified woman who did not want to be managed. Claire wiped her face. "I need you to ask if I want you there." A long silence passed. Then Adrian put the phone away. "Claire," he said carefully, "do you want me to come with you?" She hated how much the question hurt, because no one had asked her that in years. After a moment, she nodded. Yes, at the hospital, Adrian did not command the nurses. He did not call the board. He did not ask for special treatment with the smooth authority of his last name. He sat beside Claire through the night in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights. When Daniel stabilized near dawn, Claire finally fell asleep sitting upright, her hands still clenched in her lap. Adrian removed his coat and placed it over her shoulders. In the doorway, Mia stood silently, having followed Victoria to the hospital and slipped away. She saw Claire sleeping beneath Adrian's coat. She saw her uncle beside her, not distant, not powerful, not performing duty, just there. And for the first time, Mia wondered if this marriage might be becoming something no contract had known how to name. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Claire saw it first on her phone while sitting beside Daniel's hospital bed, half awake, her neck stiff from another night in a plastic chair. A headline glowed on the screen. CO Adrian Shaw seen entering secret women's shelter. New marriage already in trouble? Below it was a blurry photograph of Adrian outside Elise House, rain on his coat, face turned away from the camera. The article did not mention broken faucets, donated blankets, job training forms, or children sleeping safely for the first time in weeks. By noon, the story had multiplied. Business blogs questioned whether Adrian had hidden personal liabilities from Shaw Meridian investors. Gossip sites called Claire the contract wife betrayed before the ink dried. Comment sections treated her life like a menu of humiliations. Some pitied her, some mocked her. Some said a woman who married for stability should not be surprised when stability came without love. Claire read that sentence 3 times before turning off her phone. At the Shaw estate, Victoria was furious in the controlled way only powerful people managed. She did not shout. She moved through rooms as if every step accused someone. In her mind, the problem was not Elise House. The problem was exposure. She believed Claire had made Adrian careless. Before this marriage, Adrian's grief had been orderly. His secrets had remained where they belonged. Now reporters were calling, board members were panicking, and the Shaw name was being dragged through words like shelter, abuse, liability, investigation. The board reacted even faster. By evening, Adrian into a conference room where men and women in expensive suits explained compassion in risk management terms. Elise House had to be separated from Shaw Meridian immediately. Better yet, folded into a branded charitable foundation, polished, audited, photographed, controlled. The women could still be helped, they said, but the story needed better architecture. Adrian listened without expression. Claire sat beside him, silent. She could feel the old version of him returning. The man who protected people by closing doors around himself. He was preparing to take the blame, absorb the scandal, distance her from the damage, and stand alone because loneliness was the one strategy he trusted. He thought that was love. Claire was beginning to understand it was fear. The press conference was arranged within 24 hours. Victoria approved the statement herself. It was elegant, bloodless, and cruel in the way careful language could be cruel. Elise House would be described as a personal charitable interest. Claire would be framed as unaware of the situation. Shaw Meridian would review all connections. Adrian would express regret for any confusion. No one would lie directly. That made it worse. Reporters filled the room at Shaw Meridian headquarters. Cameras pointed toward the podium. Adrian stood behind it, the prepared statement in front of him, looking like a man about to bury something alive. Claire watched from the side. She thought of Elise's video, showing up after the speech ended. She thought of the bruised woman at the shelter, the children in the blanket fort, Mia watching from the hospital doorway, Daniel pretending not to worry about being a burden. She thought of herself, standing in a wedding dress with medical bills in her hand, believing stability was the best life could offer her. Then Adrian reached the line about Claire having no knowledge of the matter. And Claire stepped forward. The room shifted at once. Victoria turned sharply. Adrian stopped reading. Claire did not take the microphone from him. She stood beside him and faced the cameras with shaking hands and a steady voice. She did not pretend theirs had been a love match. She said their marriage began as an arrangement, built on need, guardianship, money, fear, and two people trying to survive different storms. Adrian had hidden things from her. She had agreed to a marriage that promised safety before intimacy. Neither of them was innocent of using distance as protection. But Elise House, she said, was not a scandal. It was not a mistress. It was not a liability with beds. It was a door for women who had been locked inside fear. A door for children who had learned to pack quietly. A door Elise Shaw had opened before anyone in the Shaw family understood why it mattered. Reporters stopped typing. Claire looked at Adrian then, not as a wife defending her husband, but as a woman refusing to let grief become another locked room. She said he did not have to hide his pain to prove he had loved Elise. The dead did not ask the living to stay lonely forever. Love was not honored by turning every new tenderness into betrayal. Adrian's face changed. Something in him gave way, not dramatically, but visibly enough that the cameras caught it. When he spoke again, he pushed the prepared statement aside. He admitted he had kept Elise House secret because he was afraid. Afraid of the board. Afraid of his mother. Afraid that if the world saw what Elise had built, it would also see how long it had taken him to become present in the way she once needed. He had used work, duty, privacy, and silence to avoid the most frightening truth. He was alive and part of him wanted to love again. He promised Elise House would remain open, transparent, independently governed, and protected from becoming a Shaw Meridian public relations campaign. The headlines changed within the hour. Not all were kind, but they were no longer simple. After the press conference, Victoria waited in a private hallway, her face pale with anger. She told Claire she had overstepped. For the first time, Claire did not shrink. She answered that this had always been the problem. Victoria believed Claire had a position granted by the Shaw family, instead of a voice that belonged to her already. Victoria looked to Adrian, expecting correction. Adrian stood beside Claire, not in front of her, beside her. He told his mother that Claire was his wife, but more importantly, she was not property of the Shaw name. Elise House would not be buried for comfort, and neither would Claire's dignity. Victoria left without another word. That night the estate felt different, not warmer exactly, but less airless. Adrian found Claire in the library, sitting beneath a lamp, still wearing the navy dress from the press conference. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then he admitted he did not know when their marriage had stopped feeling like a contract. Claire looked at her ring. "Maybe it hasn't stopped yet," she said softly. But for the first time, I want to try rewriting the terms. Adrian sat beside her. No papers. No witnesses. No promises polished for the world. Only two people, finally beginning with the truth. A few months later, Daniel learned how to complain about online classes from a hospital bed with the dramatic exhaustion of an old professor. That was how Claire knew he was getting better. His color had returned. His doctors were cautiously optimistic. He still had bad days, and Claire still woke sometimes with the old terror already sitting on her chest, but the crisis had loosened its grip. One afternoon, Daniel closed his laptop and looked at her with unusual seriousness. "You don't have to stay married because of me." Claire looked up from the insurance forms she no longer had to fight alone. "I know. I mean it, Claire. So do I." She folded the papers slowly. "At first, I married Adrian because I needed safety. For you, for myself. For a life that didn't feel like it was collapsing every month." Daniel waited. Claire smiled faintly. "But I'm staying for something harder to explain." At the Shaw estate, Mia had begun leaving her bedroom door open, not all the way. Just a few inches. For Mia, that was a confession. She started asking Claire small questions while pretending not to care about the answers. Did Claire like tea or coffee? Did Daniel snore? Did she think Elise would have liked the new curtains at Elise's house? Then one evening, while Claire helped her with homework, Mia asked if Claire loved Uncle Adrian. Claire did not rush to answer. She told Mia that love did not always begin with fireworks, music, or people running across airports. Sometimes love began in a hospital hallway, when someone sat beside you and did not try to fix your fear. Sometimes it began when a person who was used to controlling everything finally learned to simply stay. Mia thought about that, then nodded. Elise's house changed too. It became transparent, legally independent, and protected from becoming a Shaw Meridian branding project. Claire took charge of redesigning the children's rooms. She chose soft lamps, washable rugs, lockable cubbies, reading corners and curtains the children could help pick themselves. Adrian came every Thursday now, but differently. Not like a man punishing himself with service. Not like a widower trying to keep a ghost alive. He came like someone continuing a promise in daylight. One Thursday evening, he brought Claire to the finished children's room. The walls were warm yellow. Tiny stars had been painted near the ceiling. On one wall, in Elise's handwriting, carefully copied and framed, were the words, "A safe room is the first place a wounded heart remembers how to breathe." Claire stood very still. Adrian took a small box from his coat pocket. Inside was a ring. Not the diamond from their wedding. This one was simpler, warmer, with a small stone Mia had helped choose. Adrian's voice was quiet. He said he was not trying to buy back the marriage. He was not asking her to erase how it began. He only wanted to know whether she would begin again with him. Not as a bargain, not as protection, not as Elise's replacement, but as Claire. Claire removed the old ring. She did not throw it away. That ring was part of their truth. It had paid bills, opened doors, and carried a sadness neither of them needed to deny. She placed it gently in the box. Then she put on the new one. "This time," she said, "I'm not marrying you because I need a roof over my head. I choose you because you learned how to become a home without locking me inside." Adrian closed his eyes as if the words had reached somewhere no one had touched in years. Their ending was not perfect. Victoria was still complicated. Shaw Meridian still demanded too much. Claire still had days when she feared becoming the woman everyone thought had been rescued. Adrian still had days when love made him reach for control instead of trust. But now they could name those fears. And once something could be named, it no longer ruled the room. Their marriage had begun as a contract for survival. But love began when both of them finally understood that stability was not worth much if it required being unseen. If I were Claire, I think I would have been afraid to admit I had fallen in love inside a marriage that began as a deal. But maybe the bravest thing she did was stop confusing safety with surrender. So let me ask you, would you stay in a marriage that began for stability if real love slowly grew from the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching Soul-Stirring Stories. A real home is not the place that keeps you trapped. It is the place where you are finally seen and still free to stay.